My name is Schukoske and I am from Informal Discussion Group at NMU. And today we are very excited to have Professor J with us. So Professor, to give a little tidbit about Professor J for those who don't know, Professor began her career as a legal services attorney, and she also directed the Virginia Poverty Law Center and supervises JD clinic students at Georgetown University of Washington, USA. Professor is also a Fulbright scholar at University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. And Professor J also serves as the head of the Sehgal Foundation and is also headed the Fulbright Commission in New Delhi. So ma'am, that's an inspiring feat to me. Okay, so as we spoke about a career trajectory, what was the specific incidents or a moment that defined your career path earlier in your
Right. So I began my career as a legal services attorney because I wanted to help the underrepresented in society. And that has been a through line my whole career. It's just I've worked at it in different ways over the years. So initially I was representing individual clients, but then groups of clients. Particularly housing, tenants and housing situations and consumers. So I found that the impact of working with groups was greater than the usual impact of working with individuals. Both are really important to the practice of law. That led me to move to the Virginia Poverty Law Center after about 9 years of practice. And the Virginia Poverty Law Center is a statewide center. So if it were in India, it would be the Odisha Poverty Law Center, looking at patterns of problems of the poor around the state. And working with lawyers who are helping with cases around the state. What you find is there are patterns of problems. So the lawyers may not know there are patterns of problems, but you as a center can share research and strategies with people all over the state. So we had a small team of maybe 7 lawyers who were working with lawyers around the state. I then went back to law school after doing that for 3 years and got an LLM. In the United States, you get a bachelor's degree, then 3 years of law school to get a JD, and then if you're interested in teaching, you go back for an LLM. 2 years at Georgetown. And so at Georgetown, I both took courses, but also supervised Georgetown JD students who were doing clinical work in community. Now, there are clinics here.
Yes ma'am.
And what are they focused on?
Ma'am, we have a legal services clinic in our university.
Uh-huh. And what kind of cases do they do?
Ma'am, I'm not fully aware.
Okay, so it's one thing for students to find out what is your university doing in terms of legal services to the poor.
It is spread legal awareness around the communities in Odisha.
It's important to have legal awareness, but it's also important for people to be able to connect up with law students and attorneys and paralegal volunteers who can actually help people address specific issues. So legal awareness is a good first step, but then it has to be followed up with people who are actually trying to solve the problems.
Ma'am, as you mentioned about that you supervise JD clinic in Georgetown University, can you discuss your experience and how it impacts the clinical legal education?
So Georgetown, there are 2 things happening. One was, yes, I was supervising students, drawing on my own experience as a lawyer working with clients. And secondly, we had classes, LLM classes, where we were learning the various aspects of representation. So how do you find out facts for a case? How do you develop a strategy for a case? How do you negotiate with an opposing party?
That's interesting.
Yes. And how do you research effectively? Because you have to have all those components, facts, law, strategy, in order to represent the client well. So what often happens in clinics is that students work as a team.
Right.
That way, it's not like a test where you're stuck by yourself. In real life, you have other people to collaborate with so that you as a group can do the best possible for a client. And you tap the different skills of different people. Some people like to talk, some people rather be in a book. And you can use both people when you're preparing for a case.
Ma'am, Ma'am, you also headed the Fulbright Commission in Delhi.
Yes.
So what initiatives did you take to match the cultural and educational exchange between the United States and India?
Okay. Well, first, before I address that, earlier you asked me about career turns.
Right.
So I had been a law professor,
Yes.
heading a clinic. The last clinic was a community development clinic. And during the course of that time, I took a year off from teaching in the U.S. and went to Sri Lanka, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So there I learned a lot about South Asia. I hadn't been to South Asia until that time.
Yes, ma'am. You're a Fulbright scholar at University of Colombo.
Yes,
Sri Lanka, yeah.
right. So that Fulbright scholar experience gave me an understanding of the program, so it was plausible for me to apply to direct it in India.
Yeah.
Although, of course, the India office had very high volume, it was a very big, responsible position. As a lawyer, what I got back was all the other disciplines. Fulbright is for many different disciplines: literature, arts, law, social work, sociology, and so as a career turn, that was a very interesting turn. I felt like instead of being narrowly in law, I was able to work with people from many disciplines.
Yeah, you can interact with students of many community disciplines, as you said,
Right.
apart from law.
Right.
So what initiatives, back to our previous
Yes. So, well, one of the things that we did was regional conferences. I actually found some money. And it is so inspiring for people to get together and strategize across regions about the problems that they have in their communities to try to come up with solutions. So regional conferences, and in this case, I mean regional, like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, South Asia. Because in law school teaching in U.S., I was teaching in a community development clinic where we helped community organizations like neighborhood associations or community gardeners form associations so that they could have more agency in their communities. Now, going to work with an NGO, as the CEO of an NGO, I was not creating an entity, but carrying it forward after it had a number of years of experience. So when I got to Sego Foundation, which focuses on rural development, water, agriculture, good governance, women's empowerment, rural health, and also they have a program called Transform Lives, one school at a time, where they're working with government schools to try to increase their capacity.
That's good.
So at first they were working in 17 villages in Haryana. By the time I left, they were working in 8 states. So one of the things we learned to do was to expand. And one wants to be loyal to communities, but if you are only operating in a small area, you'll have a big effect in that small area, but not farther.
Diversified.
So what they learned to do was to expand to work with other communities. Now that was partly because government of India passed a legal change, so it was important to know law. The Companies Act was amended so that there was a requirement for corporates over a certain size, certain assets or income, to devote a percentage of their funds to corporate social responsibility. And India supports that as a strategy for development and change. And so that's how the organization now is operating in 12 states.
Oh, wow.
And there are lots of details on the website that will tell you how many villages they're in.
That's amazing. As you talked about the transformation in rural development, what challenges did you face?
Well, so one thing that is a driving force for Sego Foundation is that the change is to be community driven. That means you actually have to figure out how to communicate well with people. And it's so easy for people who mean well to go in with their vision of what should change without adequately taking into account what the local people see as the need for change. So that's a really important fundamental principle of Sego Foundation's work. And it's important to be effective because if you do something that you think is great, when you go away it might end. But if you help people do something they want to do, then it can be sustained.
Right, of course. Ma'am, the other question is that what advice would you give to law students who want to pursue higher education abroad?
So there are many opportunities for pursuing higher education abroad. The United States is certainly one, and the Fulbright Commission has an educational advising office that would, you can find a lot on the internet, but also there are offices in the key cities in India where students could go for advice and for session. They have sessions about how to shortlist universities, how to apply for visas once you've gained admission, how you apply for financing and so forth. So it's important to be in touch with the U.S. India Education Foundation. It's the name of the Fulbright Commission now. But there are other countries that are offering many good opportunities. Canada, certainly, Ireland, Germany. So it's important to check the internet and see what might be suitable.
Right, sure. So last question, any advice for students of NNU?
You have a marvelous situation here in Qatar. You have a great Vice Chancellor, been here since 1995. When we met, she and I were at a clinical legal education conference that Madhava Menon, was holding at National University. So I know that she is a real advocate for working with communities. It's an important part of your education, not just to study through the books, not just to intern with corporates, but actually to work with legal aid clinics and see what it is like to counsel real clients, see what the issues are. India is so complicated because of languages and differences among states. You're a national law university, so I imagine you have people from all the states, all over the country. So what is it that you, who will be leaders in your states, can envision while you're here to take it back? Many people will go back to the states they came from, some will go elsewhere. But how can this national law university actually contribute nationally to sound development of both urban and rural India, increasing equity and access around the country, lifting up everybody to the extent that we can.
So thank you, ma'am, for this interview, for being a part of this interview, and thank you everyone for watching this. And I hope that you all have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Right. Check the U.S. India Education Foundation website if you're interested in applying for a Fulbright scholarship, and also look up those other opportunities that you might find from Canada or Australia.